Welcome to the LDS Mental Health Podcast. This is a podcast for faithful women who want healing in their relationships, guidance from God, and internal peace. Each week, you'll hear mental health concepts taught through a spiritual lens from me, a licensed clinical mental health counselor, to help you start thinking in a higher and holier way. All right. Welcome everyone to that back to the podcast. I'm so excited to have an amazing guest on today. She probably doesn't need an introduction. You guys probably know her pretty well, but we'll do a little introduction. I'm so excited to welcome Jody Moore to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Hi, Nikki. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yes. So in case there's one person maybe listening that doesn't know you, would you like to introduce
There's actually
yourself?
a lot. You'd be surprised.
Well, I think a lot of our niche loves you and really appreciates all that you've done for the mental health community for sure. So
thank you.
Maybe just do a little introduction about who you are, where you're from, maybe your family, and then your business and what you do.
Okay. Yeah. Jody Moore. I live right now in Spokane, Washington, where I was raised. But I moved away. I've done, a Utah stint, a California stint, a whole bunch of lived in a lot of other places and came back to Spokane about 5 years ago. So I've got 4 kids who are between the ages of 8 and 17.
Awesome.
So a little bit of everything other than I don't have adult kids yet. And yeah, live here with my husband and family, and we love a lot of things about here, but today it's -2 degrees and we would prefer a little bit less winter and darkness than we get here, but otherwise it's a great place to live. So, as far as my business, I learned about life coaching in the way, life coaching is such a weird and general term, but the tools that I now use as a life coach, I was introduced to in my corporate job 10 years ago, to help. I was a leadership coach. And so I was taught them to kind of help guide managers and directors who were leading sales teams. And it was really powerful, but then I started exploring it deeper and saw that it was also really powerful in other areas of your life outside of business, like your relationships and your confidence and your health and all the things. And as a member of the LDS Church, who, majority of my friends at the time were stay-at-home moms, I kept looking at them being like, gosh, because I worked in corporate, I got to go to these like development things. They were usually meant to help me with my job, but they also really helped me personally, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And I was like, I get to go to these conferences and hear these great speakers. And I know their husbands are going to all of that stuff. And they're at home doing the hardest work ever of raising kids, and they need it just as much and deserve it like just as much. And so I really kind of set out initially to serve that population similar to who you serve. I was just like, listen, there's so much help and tools and resources available, and I want to be a part of getting that out. And so it's been 10 years now. We still coach. We've got more men now that have joined us, but it's still majority women. And I just love what I do so much. I would, people say I would do it for free. And I'm like, I mean, I do like the money and I need money to live.
Right.
But I love it enough that I'm very grateful I get to do it and earn a living at it. So
true. So true. I couldn't agree more. Yes. And it's just so fun when you work with the people that you love working with. When you find that niche that you just love working with, it's so amazing. So
it's been great. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to have you here. I was telling you that we were meeting together as a team talking about this year with podcasts and what topics we wanted to do. And one of the topics that we wanted to talk about was like, this is Jody Moore's topic. She can talk about this. I'm so excited. But we were just kind of, I have a small but mighty team of 3 of us. And we were talking about women getting sucked into the social media scroll. Like as life, we sort of need to check out sometimes. Life is overwhelming. Life is hard. Life is difficult. And I find myself sometimes too, just getting sucked into that social media to check out of whatever I'm dealing with. And then pretty soon time is gone, right? And time is a fleeting commodity that we want more of. So
Mm.
let's maybe start off our discussion with, what do you see as kind of the main reason women turn to social media as a coping tool? What's going on with women? What's happening?
Mm-hmm. Gosh, I mean, I just want to preface what I'll say with I have not studied this or even read a lot of research about it. So this
Yeah.
is purely anecdotal. And I would say, like, the person that I can give you the most details on is myself, because I'm
Yep.
definitely as guilty as anyone else of this.
Yes.
So let me just preface with that. But here's what I think is, first of all, I think we're all aware that the people that design the social media apps design them to be addictive. And I
Yeah.
don't say that in a vilifying way. I know a lot of people say it like we picture a bunch of evil white men sitting around the table, like, how do we ruin people's
Yes.
lives?
Yeah. Yeah. No, they're
And
marketing. They're trying to make their product good.
yeah, and the truth
Yeah.
is, I also am a marketer, and I'm trying
Yes.
to figure out, how do I get people to want to come and utilize my services? And so
Yeah.
I don't think that most marketers, excuse me, are evil. And
Yeah.
even the people that create social media apps, maybe, I'm sure there's a few with ill intentions, but I think for the most part, they're like, what do people want? What's engaging? What's gonna make their lives better? So,
Yeah.
but there is definitely a lot of thought around, how do we make people want to check this app more often? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I start with that, because what I find, I'm sure you can relate to this, Nikki, is that
Yeah.
sometimes when we start pointing out to people, like, for example, maybe being scrolling social all the time isn't good for you, and or a good use of your time, then they are hard on themselves, right? And so I
Mm-hmm.
like to begin with, like, no, there's nothing wrong with you. You're
Yeah.
not even weak or
Yeah.
lacking in discipline.
Yes.
It's the world that we're living in. Like, it's
Yep.
super hard.
Yes.
Um, I mean, I had this happen just this morning. Okay. So today's a work day for me, and I've got a million things I need to get done.
Yeah.
But there's so many things, and because I hadn't planned my day ahead of time well enough, when I sit down at my desk, and whether you work or you've got kids, and there's tasks you want to get done around home and errands to run, it's the same, okay? But the
Yeah.
brain hates trying to figure out, what do I need to do next?
Yes.
And so it's much easier to just think, I should just really quickly see if anybody has posted a Be Real since
I
last
know.
I posted mine.
That's like my favorite thing. Yes.
Because Be Real
Yeah.
is really
Yeah.
quick, right?
I
It's
know.
not like
Right. Yes.
Instagram where
Yeah.
so
And
I'll
you
just
don't get sucked in
quickly
there.
see, right? Who's on
Yep.
Be I did it just this morning. And then
Yep.
next thing you know, there's an Instagram alert that somebody messaged me. So I should
Yeah.
also see what that is. And
Yes.
before you
Yeah.
know it. So
Yeah.
it's just so much easier. The brain prefers ease. Okay. It doesn't
Yeah.
want to waste energy and attention and effort. And it thinks that most things are a waste. So it's like, it sounds a lot easier and would give us an
Mhm.
immediate little dopamine hit,
Right. And say
is
reward
just
center. What can I do to
little
get there?
reward
Yep.
is
Yep.
just checking social media. So
Yeah.
it's just natural human behavior. And of course, you can
Mhm.
override that. I'm not saying that you don't have a choice there, but there are strategies and systems that will help you prevent that, of course.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'd be curious to hear your opinion on this, but I
Yeah.
think we are wired for connection. We are
Hmm.
interested in what other people are doing. We are somewhat entertained by
Hmm.
what we see on social media. I mean,
Yep.
my kids are on Be Real. So my teenage daughter, who's at school right now, posts
Yeah.
hers, and I kind of like going, "Oh,
I know,
there's
right?
Macy. She's eating lunch with her friends." And
Yes.
it's not, I don't want to vilify social
Yeah.
media,
Right. Right.
but
Yeah.
it is just a quick, immediate pleasure hit that
Hmm.
can then sometimes sabotage our other goals in life.
I 100% agree. I like, in even just working with people coming into my office as a therapist, I think there's this, we talk about this dopamine hit kind of addiction, right? And
Yeah.
especially like TikTok, if something doesn't give us that dopamine hit in 2 to 3 seconds, we have scrolled past it. Like if you watch your patterns, right? Like, or the
Yeah.
stories, you're just clicking past it. If I'm not getting a dopamine hit in 2 to 3 seconds, I'm done with that. And if you're sitting down to do a project or like laundry, or you've got to do something around the house, those are not going to give you those dopamine hits, right? And who
Right.
doesn't want one before they go out and do that, right? Who
That's
doesn't
right.
want that upper to go do some of these things, right? And so I think it becomes, especially for me, like if I'm going to sit down and have to write something or I've got to record something and I'm like, this is going to take a lot of brain power. My brain is like path of least resistance, right? Like
Mhm.
what can I get to and what's going to make me feel good? And this is kind of off the topic, but I think too, like I find myself too sometimes just finding some sweet salty snack too, right? Get that
Yeah.
dopamine hit some way. Like what are the things that make us feel good in the moment quickly? And we can get very addicted to immediate hits. Like if you watch
Yes.
a movie from the 90s, our brains are like, this is so slow. Like everything
Right.
feels like this is
Yes.
so, how did I feel entertained by this back then? Because our brains weren't trained to have dopamine hits every 3 to 6 seconds. And that's the way
That's
the
right.
movies are made now, right? That's what that's what works on social media, right? Is something that gets you interested quickly.
Everything is sped up, right? To
Mm-hmm.
happen faster. Even like think about how I bet you most people listening to this podcast have us on 1.5 speed, at least.
That's how I
Which I
listen.
hope
Yep.
they do because I think I sound a lot smarter on 1.5 speed, so you should speed us up
Yes. I'm at
personally.
least 1.25 on everyone.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
If somebody's a
Exactly.
fast talker, I'll slow it
Yep.
down to
Yep.
1.25. But I'm not listening
Yeah.
to anybody on normal
No.
speed. Are you kidding me? And yet,
No.
if you take a public speaking class, right, they're still
Yeah.
saying everybody
Slow down.
slow down. Most people
Yeah.
talk too fast. So I'm constantly like, no, how could that be true? That I believe
Yeah.
I believe it because that's what
Yeah.
everybody teaches. Talk
Yeah.
slower. But
Yeah.
why are we all speeding everyone up? It's just like you
Yeah.
said. And my guess is we're not probably retaining the information as well
Yeah. We're not
or what
processing
have
it in
you.
between for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's this fast
Hmm.
speed, like you said, pleasure hit that we crave. It's normal and natural, and it's kind of
Hmm.
cool that we live in a world where there is a lot of it. You just have to know how to manage yourself around it so that it doesn't sabotage your true goals in
You can
the
get
end.
sucked in real easy. You can
Yeah,
that can become something that, well, and as a therapist, like that affects depression, right? That affects
that's right.
anxiety. Like if you're training your brain to do that, nothing else in your life will feel joyful, right?
Yeah.
Like you may not necessarily have a quote unquote bad life, right? Or any circumstances that are creating something to have depression, but we've trained our brain that it needs to be at this top level, and
Yeah.
just the general things that we experience during the day don't no longer give you that dopamine hit like they did before, which can cause a lot of
So,
damage.
yeah, this is reminding me, this is the best way I've heard it described. Have you heard of Dr. Anna Lemke's book, Dopamine Nation?
No, I should
Okay,
check that out. Okay.
it's actually I haven't read the whole book. And we should warn listeners not for teens because she talks about some really serious kind of disturbing
Mhm.
addictions in that book. But
Yeah.
I heard her speak at a conference recently, and it was so fascinating the way she described the studies that they've done on the brain. And this explains exactly what's happening with social media, with
Uh,
snacks, with porn, with
mhm.
online shopping, whatever
Yep.
the quick hit is, right?
Mhm.
So she says that the brain actually wants balance. So every time we have pleasure, there needs to be some kind of what she would call pain in equal
Mhm.
proportion to it in order to keep the brain balanced, right? So, like folding laundry, I don't get an immediate pleasure hit from, but I do after the laundry's all folded and it's done, I do get a sense of fulfillment and
Yeah.
like joy over having done that task and seeing the organization and the completeness of it. It's just that it's a smaller hit because
Mhm.
and it requires some work to achieve. I have to sit down
Delayed
and actually
gratification.
it's delayed, but
Mhm.
it's kind of equal like the amount of work. It's not like backbreaking work necessarily. Doesn't
Yeah.
require like a PhD to do it. It's not
Right.
that
Yep.
hard, right? But
Yep.
it's a little bit of effort, a little bit of focus, and in return I get a little bit of reward. That's a
Yeah.
balanced situation, right? So it will
Yeah.
feel fulfilling. When I get on Instagram and I scroll really fast, that's like no work for
Yeah.
tons of reward. So when you say ultimately the studies are showing this leads to depression and things. So the
Yeah.
way Anna Lemke describes it is you have all these you have all this pleasure if you think about a teeter-totter, right? And then it's
Mhm.
tipped onto the side of pleasure.
Yep.
And so these pain gremlins hop on the other side of the teeter-totter to try to balance it out. So
Yes.
now you're like, why am I so depressed? Why
Yep.
am I feeling down? It's because you all have all these pain gremlins trying to
Hmm.
balance out the pleasure side. And
Yeah.
what happens is we become sort of desensitized to what are just small natural pleasures. Like we should be able to get a lot of pleasure in our everyday life. I should be able to walk outside and notice how pretty the sunset is and get a
Hmm.
little small bit of pleasure out of that. Or
Yeah.
to, right? These
Hmm.
small easy things should be giving us pleasure. When we're depressed, we don't care about any of that. And there can be
Exactly.
a lot of things that go into depression, don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but I'm
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
saying that that is possibly one of the really negative side effects of any concentrated pleasure
Yep.
is those pain gremlins hop on the pain side. And Anna Lemke says if you just wait it out, they'll hop off eventually
Mm.
and you can rebalance naturally and start to feel a natural amount. And she works again with people with serious addictions. One of the first things that they do is sort of a detox from whether it's a literal drug detox or a pornography addiction or whatever kind of addiction, a detox for, I think she said 21 days to see if they can just rebalance the brain before they even
Yeah.
have to start medicating or things like that.
Yes. So
So fascinating.
true. It is fascinating because if you think about the pain gremlins, sometimes we need to create those pain gremlins in our lives
Yeah.
in order, like self-sabotaging, right? Or things
Yeah.
that can bring that back down. Like dopamine and serotonin work opposite of each other, right? And
Yeah.
we need those to be balanced out. And so we become angry or irritated, and create situations within our own relationships, that can to bring that balance back out, and that creates
Mhm.
an unhealthy cycle in our life, and we may not even be aware that that's
That's
exactly
right.
what's happening.
That's right. We don't understand why am I so grumpy? Well, it's
Yeah.
because too much dopamine,
Yep.
right?
Hmm.
Not balanced by the pain center.
Yeah.
Your brain is reacting to that. It's
Yes.
it's so interesting to me.
Yeah, I just had
You
this
know that
visual of
world
like,
better than I do,
yes,
but
like you might like Diet Coke, but you don't go over there and keep pushing the Diet Coke machine so it's like pouring over on your hand, right? Just because you
right.
love Diet Coke. Like that's what I visualize this overpowering dopamine with. Like, yeah, we like it, but too much excess of that can really create a mess in our
Yeah.
lives, just like
Yeah.
the spill of that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, awesome.
So should we talk to people about some strategies
Yes. Yes.
maybe?
Yeah.
Because
So if you're relating with this, what do you do? Right.
yeah, if you're relating with this and you're like, I know, and for some people, some people decide to get off social media altogether, and if that's going to serve you best, I'm in with whatever works best for people. But
Yeah.
I do believe that we can manage most people are able to
Hmm.
manage themselves around it. I think social media, like anything else, can be a tool for a lot of good. I've personally gotten a lot of help. There's a lot of good
Yeah.
education. I'm on social media all the time trying to help
Yes.
people,
Yep.
and I don't think it has to be all or nothing. One of the strategies that I encourage for people with anything that they feel is kind of a chronic issue is you want to decide ahead of time. You don't want to be continuously answering the urge. Okay. So what
Yeah.
happens is I have this urge or desire to pick up my phone and
Yeah.
see what's happening on it.
Hmm.
Right. And every time I answer that urge or desire, I reinforce that neural pathway in the brain that says, hey, every time we do this, we get a little hit of pleasure. We should do that more. And then
Yep.
we answer it with pleasure, and then it wants it again. So
Hmm.
we don't want to be answering the urge. We want to diminish the urge as much as possible by not answering the urge. And that happens by deciding in advance. So maybe I say to myself, okay, I'm going to allow myself to check my Instagram every day at noon for 30 minutes or
Yeah.
whatever, 15
Be
minutes, whatever you,
intentional about it. Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
Then when it's 9:30 in the morning and I'm tempted, I'm just like, no, we're not doing that now. Remember, we're going to do that at 12:30. That's when it's scheduled.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, and this is the same thing I have people do with food if they're trying to stop eating so much sugar or stop drinking so much alcohol or whatever. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
literally the exact same thing. If I say to myself, I'm going to have chocolate on Monday
Yeah.
at 5 p.m. when I go out to dinner with my husband, I'm going to have a chocolate dessert, then it's so fascinating how much less of a dopamine hit I would get if I had planned it in advance. So when
Mm.
I get on my social media at 12:30 because it was planned, it's still like kind of entertaining and fun,
Yeah.
but it's not nearly as gratifying and satisfying as answering that urge.
Oh, yes. Good point.
I mean, the
Yeah.
same with the food. I've done this with food and it's actually really disappointing. I'm like, I'm going to have that my favorite dessert 3 days from now. And
Yes.
I think about it and I tell myself 3 days from now. And on that third day when I have it, I'm actually usually really disappointed. I'm like, I mean, it's good,
Yeah.
but it's not
Yeah.
as good as I remember it because I'm
Yes.
not eating it in response to an immediate urge.
Exactly.
And it's
Yes.
bizarre and somewhat disappointing, but also pretty empowering to learn this thing isn't as
Yeah.
amazing as part of me believed it was.
Yes. Well, also when you're answering an urge, your brain is probably typically in a default state, right? It's a responsive state. It is not your logical thinking brain, right? It's not where you're processing information really well. And it's usually in response to feeling you're wanting to feel fulfilled in some way, right? Like
Yeah.
that this urge is to hurry up and fix something in my life. Something is off and I need to hurry up and
Yeah.
fix it right now.
Yeah, it's like trying to escape a negative emotion,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
So like
Mm-hmm.
the example I gave this morning with my work is I was kind of overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Like I've got so many things, but I don't even know where to begin and I can't remember what all the things are.
Yeah.
And so kind of that overwhelmed feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, my teacher, Brooke Castillo, who owns the life coach school, she talks about this a lot. She's like, you don't have an overeating problem. You don't have an over scrolling social media problem. You have an
Yeah.
under feeling problem.
Yes.
If you were just willing to feel overwhelmed,
Mm-hmm.
then you would just be overwhelmed and you wouldn't have to answer it with checking your phone. If
Yeah.
you're willing to be bored or be uncomfortable or be stressed out, you wouldn't have to answer it with a snack. You
Yeah.
just be stressed out. Like
Yeah.
if we learn how to just feel feelings, then we don't have to constantly escape them. And the truth is, they don't last
Yeah.
that long, especially if you process them in a healthy way, take a
Yep.
deep breath, go for
Mm-hmm.
a walk, whatever.
Yep.
Like there can
Yeah.
be useful, helpful ways, but
Uh-huh.
we have under feeling problems, is what we
So
have.
true. Yes. Yes. I talk about that all the time. There was actually a research study done that talked about like if you feel a feeling, usually it's less than 30 seconds that
Mm,
your brain will process it. It will pass through all those chemicals, will dissipate in your body. But the reality of what we think is going to happen is this is going to be 4 days. If I let myself feel this, it's probably 4 days of feeling this. So
yeah.
I better put that one off because it's going to be
Yeah.
overwhelming and too much to feel. And it will completely take me down if I feel that one. But most
Mm,
emotions, if we allow ourselves to pass through them when they happen, not dam them up and let them build up behind the dam. And then when we feel them, we're feeling the whole flood of emotions.
right. That's
But if
right.
we just allow them to come through, it's the research is around 30 seconds that we can just feel it.
Yeah, I love that. And again, another thing I just want to add that Anna Lemke said that backs all this up is when, so we all know like anticipation is just as great as realization or even better, sometimes they say,
So
right?
true. So true.
So she says, literally in the brain, when you think about doing it, like when I get the alert on my phone, someone commented on your Instagram, or I just have the
Mm-hmm.
thought I should check it. We get a little dopamine hit just thinking about doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So she draws this chart where there's like a little uptick. Okay. And because now the brain wants to stay balanced in up and down, right? We get
Yeah.
the little uptick thinking about it, which gives us a little drop below where we were.
Yeah.
And that's what the urge or the desire is.
Yes.
So if it hadn't even occurred to me to check Instagram, I wouldn't be feeling as uncomfortable as I am now that it occurred to me. I had the little up and now I've got the little down. It's not
Yeah.
drastic, but it's a little, right? And so she says, if you can sit in that little downward spike, then
Yeah.
it will level off after, like you said, maybe 30 seconds, maybe whatever time
Yes.
frame. It will just level off naturally.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
Yeah.
when we aren't comfortable sitting in that, we answer it and then we get the big spike up followed by a bigger drop often. And so it really, I was like, oh yeah, that's what I'm always saying as a coach with like, you have an underfeeling problem. The primary emotion of an unanswered urge actually without resisting it
Yeah.
without going, no, 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 I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm not supposed to eat that thing. I'm not supposed to check Instagram. That makes it worse. That's resistance on top of it. But if
Yes.
you're just like, oh, this is interesting. I'm a little bit bored. I'm a little bit overwhelmed right now,
Yeah.
then that's pretty minor and your brain will level off on its own.
Hmm. I was just thinking as you're talking about this, like strategy wise, I'm thinking I got to turn my social media notifications off because
Yes.
that's what I think gives me that hit. Like I look down at my phone, I'm in between session, I just tap my phone to see what notifications are. I'm getting a dopamine hit when I see that notification, right? Like, oh, I got to go
Right.
check that. Oh, I got to go, do something about those kinds of things. But I think notifications probably are overwhelming us in general as well.
Definitely. And giving us, like you said, the little uptick followed by the little
Yeah.
downtick. So if you just turn them off,
Yeah.
probably it would be helpful. I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I
I
agree.
love that. Very cool. Good ideas. What other strategies do you have for women who are feeling sucked into this? They're like, that's my brain. My brain is overpowered with this dopamine.
Yeah.
We're going to be intentional about our time, maybe turn off
Hmm.
notifications. Do you have any other strategies
Yeah.
for women?
Yeah. The other thing I recommend is I really encourage, especially women and especially those of you listening who are raising kids and or serving people in some way, which is probably everyone, right?
Yeah.
To ask yourself, what do I really want and need? Because we're
Mhm.
trying to like get a little bit of joy, get a little bit of pleasure, get a little bit of entertainment. It's so fleeting. It's so meaningless. I don't think it's bad. I just
Yeah.
don't think it's actually what you actually want and need. I
Hmm.
think that your life is actually could be so much exponentially better. Every one of us. I love the
Yeah.
idea that like I might think I have a great life because I do. I think
Yeah.
I'm really lucky. I have a great family and I'm healthy and I have a business I love but what if this life that if somebody asked me, I'd say I've got my life's like an 8 or 9 out of 10. What if this is actually only a 3?
Mm.
What if there's still so much more available that I haven't even
What if
considered?
I'm living at a 3?
Right?
Yes.
But because
Yeah.
I haven't considered it because I'm already satisfying it with little bits of
Oh,
dopamine here and there. I'm getting my fix through Instagram, through a chocolate chip cookie, a Diet Coke,
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying cut out all of that from your life.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to have, you can have. But
Yeah.
like, what if there's something so much bigger than better, not only for me and my family, but that I
Hmm.
would then probably contribute to the world and to serving others?
Yeah.
And you have to let yourself be uncomfortable in order to then discover what that is and go pursue it. So,
Yeah.
I look at like I have kids who love video games. Okay, we play far too many video games in our house, and I know there's a lot of studies on the
Yeah.
detrimental effects of
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
what concerns me the most is that their brains think that they're winning,
Uh,
right? And their
yeah.
brains think that they are solving problems because
Yeah.
our brains are meant to want to win and to want to solve problems.
Yep.
But
Figure
that's
something out. Yeah.
supposed to help us go out in the world and achieve a lot of good things that serve us and other people. And if it's happening on the Xbox instead,
Yes.
then you can see how
We're
if
not getting those experiences other places.
my son's like,
Yeah.
I'm so successful. I'm like, you're successful at destiny, but
Yeah.
you could be successful at helping in the world in some way. And so
Yeah.
that's what and that's, it's easy to look at our kids and say that, but what if that's true for us too? What if like, and that's why asking yourself, what do I really want? What do I really need? And a lot of times the answer is, I don't know. So don't think you have to answer it right away, but let the question be alive. Journal on it. I like to sometimes get out a notebook and write what I really, 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 really kind of want to try is this. Or like what I secretly think would be cool to do would
uh,
be this. Because we have all kinds of fear. What if I'm a
yeah.
failure? What if people think that's stupid? I can't, I'm too old, I'm too young, I don't have enough money, I have too much money. We
Mhm.
have every excuse in
Yeah.
the book.
Discount all of it. Yeah.
So we shut it down and then we just answer what we need with social media or something. So
Yep.
you got to make space for it to be there and to be uncomfortable that you're not scratching that itch in
Hmm.
order to then discover what you want. And I don't mean that you have to go do something that you have to build a business or whatever, but maybe you do want more friends.
Yeah.
Maybe you're
Yeah.
lonely.
Yeah,
That's good to know. Let's
yeah.
not fool yourself with social media. Let's really go meet some people that could be good friends to you.
Absolutely.
You know what I
I love
mean? Like,
this.
yeah.
Yes. Well, I was just thinking as you're talking too, like, God wants so much more for us in our lives than even we want. I think sometimes we
Yes.
think that God is like, no, you need to go do this. And we're like, that would be boring. I don't want that. Right. It's like, no,
I
he
don't know
wants what
how.
you want, but you want to go here and he wants to take you 10 times higher than what
That's
you
right.
even want. God wants you. He's like very much interested in whatever your hobby is, whatever you love, and he wants
That's
to
right.
take you there and more. But I think a lot of times what we are missing out on with social media is the ability to receive revelation. That
Mm,
it's in, the still small voice is not speaking to us through the scroll of social media. I mean, sometimes
yeah.
we might find an inspirational post or we might have this, but it's like when I'm reading the scriptures, that's when the spirit is speaking to me, right? That's when I'm getting inspiration, or it's in the stillness of walking outside or feeling the sunshine on my face that I feel the inspiration come from God to take me to that place that you're talking about, right? Like what are
Yeah.
those things? And it's really it's that um combination or that teamwork with God that gets you to those places. But what are we missing out on? What are the opportunities or the revelation, or even just, it reminded me of a talk, I can't remember who gave it a couple sessions ago in conference about um the lady was talking about just standing in line, and she said at a store, and she's like, usually I'm just scrolling right on social media, but
Oh,
then she
yeah.
talked about like,
I remember
I
this.
decided to put my phone away and I just talked to this guy in front of me, right? And we had this wonderful meaningful connection, and I think it was his birthday or something, and she gave him like
Mhm.
this meaningful experience. How many of those meaningful experiences are we missing out? And I'm guilty of it, right? Like anytime I'm stopping somewhere, I'm like, I got a couple of minutes. Let me just, look at these things. Let me do this rather than engaging with the people around us. Like those are
Yeah.
those meaningful experiences that help us grow and become who we're meant to become. But are we also missing out on this great connection with God that we could be having because we fill every ounce of quiet space that we would have had before with the scroll?
That's right. Oh my gosh. I mean, and you said this earlier about how fast it is. Like I'm mostly on Instagram and it's but they don't let you post more than a 90-second video. Like you
Yeah.
have not much time
Yeah.
because no one is going to watch more than
Yes.
90 seconds. So
Yes.
if you can't make an impact in 90 seconds, forget it. And
Yes.
it's so fast and we don't even give it more than a couple seconds unless it grabs us.
Yeah.
That's not how the spirit works.
Exactly.
So, it's usually in a slower, again, something that requires a little more work. And for me, it's sometimes just listening to music
Yeah.
or even a book. Like,
Yeah.
heaven forbid anyone would listen to a whole audiobook. Like we can you give it to me in 90 seconds? That would be
Yes.
better.
Yeah. Yep.
But it's
Exactly.
those slower, more methodical. That is for me like how the spirit mostly talks to me. So I love that.
Yeah.
Um Yeah, I just think we have to also get comfortable with, like you said, spaces and silence. And
Hmm.
like I said, I'm just as guilty of it as anyone else. But like,
Yeah.
I do love having a protocol. I call it a protocol, right?
Yeah.
If I'm gonna have, if I need to, I'll have a social media protocol, which is this is when I get on
Hmm.
social media, and otherwise I don't.
Yep.
And let yourself have the discomfort of it. Let yourself wrestle with it and also be proud of yourself when you follow it and don't expect perfection. This is the other thing that
Yes.
all or nothing thinking sabotages us, right?
Yep.
So I
You're
always
not a
say, like,
failure.
no, you're not a failure and you
Yep.
haven't done anything wrong. You haven't robbed a
Yep.
bank. You
Yep.
just checked your Instagram when you said you weren't going to. So
Yep.
ease up
Yep.
a little,
Yep.
like
Yep.
we,
Exactly.
we got to keep it all in perspective. But here's the best part about working on something like this. Of course, people can apply this to any habit they want to change, but when you do, it has a ripple effect because what you're learning is how to make decisions ahead of time, first of all,
Yeah.
and how, if you're like me and planning isn't your natural default state, you've learned how to get a little bit better at planning in a way that serves you, and then how to honor your commitment to yourself. Like
Yeah.
if like I told you, Nikki, I'll be online at this time and we'll record a podcast. So
Yeah.
I'm going to show up because I don't want Nikki thinking I'm a flake.
Yeah.
I want to maintain a healthy relationship with her. But
Yeah.
do I do that for myself?
Yeah.
Or do I promise a bunch of stuff to myself and then not do it, just brush it off, make excuses, and wonder, why do I not like myself so much?
Yes.
Oh, maybe it's because
Who wants to hang out with that lady?
maybe it's because other people wouldn't like me also if I flaked on them as much.
Yes.
So my point is like your relationship with yourself is affecting every area of your life. So if you can give yourself reasonable expectations that you know you can follow, and then you follow through on them 80 to 85% of the time, and
Yep.
you can be kind to yourself when you don't. Like,
Mhm.
hey, what happened today? I thought we were going to do this and it seems like that didn't happen. Have I expected too much of you? Do we need to change it? Like,
Yeah.
if you can have that kind of relationship with yourself, you will be amazed. It's not just going to improve your habits with your social media, it's going to show up in so many areas of your life that you hadn't
Yeah.
even considered. So it's worth
Yes.
doing for that
Yeah.
reason.
I love that. I love that. A protocol. One of the things that I've tried to put in my social media protocol is either 10 days before general conference or 10 days after general conference, complete social media break, so that I
Mm.
can either absorb the spirit, have more of that silence because I'm not checking my phone, I'm not filling in those, I have more silence and I'm prepared for conference, or after conference, I am just allowing the messages to be absorbed without outside influence telling me what I should think or feel about this message, right?
I
Like I
love
can
that.
allow that space. And President Nelson encouraged us to do a social media fast a few years ago. And
Hmm.
one of the things I love from that talk is he encouraged us to write down like what we learned about that. What are we going to change about our life now? Like, what do we need to put into actions? And one of my favorite things he said is like, what did you learn has been wounding your spirit
Mm.
when you stepped away from social media? And I was like, I love that. I
So good.
love thinking about those things. Like, really,
Yeah.
like, it doesn't have to be like, well, I'm going to decrease my time, but maybe there is that component, like you're talking about, where we need a break, we need a reset, right? Like,
Yeah.
maybe there is this time period where we just need to step away for a little bit, because it's very eye-opening, like how often you're like, oh, no, I'm not checking that, right? Like the protocol,
Right.
right?
Right.
Oh, let me think about that. And usually by the end of the 10 days, I'm like, I really don't want to go back, right? Like I probably wouldn't if it wasn't part of my job. I probably wouldn't be back on there. But
Yeah.
it really is a perspective eye-opener and a shift in
Yeah.
that protocol, and give you some ideas.
I had one other thing too that I forgot. I wanted to mention that for me is really powerful, which is to curate your feed. So the algorithm is going to feed you some stuff,
Yeah.
but once a year or so, I like to go through and look at who am I following
Yeah.
and unfollow like half.
Hmm.
And it's not necessarily because they're not great
Yeah.
people that are even giving great content. It's just that I notice uh, every time I see that person, I feel really bad about my own body, or
Hmm.
I look at my own business and think that I'm not doing as well as them. So I'm going to unfollow them. Like it's for
Yep.
your own mental health. It's
Yes,
not that.
exactly.
And it also helps me let go of just being the same version of me. Like I'm constantly thinking, how do I go next level in what I'm
Yeah.
trying to do in the world, especially with my business, but even like as a mother and as my kids get older and my family changes, who am I want to be now? So it helps me mentally be like, no, I don't follow those kinds of accounts anymore. That was
Yeah.
fun. I don't have to
Yep.
be mad at them or dislike them, but I'm done with that. Now I'm interested in like maybe I decide I want to learn how to cook now that I'm almost 50 years old. And I'm going to
Yeah.
follow a couple cooking accounts and I'm going to drop off a bunch of others. Like
Yep.
curate your feed to help you become who you're trying to become.
What goals are you
And
working on? Find those things and be
and
interested in those.
yeah,
Yeah.
and just like we have to declutter our closet and get rid of the clothes we don't like anymore or that don't fit or whatever, you got to do that with I highly recommend doing that with your social feed. And it takes a little time,
Yeah.
but I've
Hmm.
done it before and I've been like, I'm so glad I did that. I should do that
Yes.
every year.
Yep. Yes. I
Yeah,
love on stories. I'll scroll to the very end because the algorithm will put the people at the front that you look at the most. So I'll
that's
scroll to the
right. And
very
then you
end and I'm
keep
like,
looking at
I
them.
forgot I even followed that person. I haven't seen their stuff, and I
Yeah,
unfollow a lot of those ones that I'm not even getting to or I'm not really engaging with, because the more that's there for me to look at, the longer I'm on there.
that's
If
right.
I'm only following a small group of people that I really want to be in check with, then I'm
It
on and
helps.
off, like be real.
Yeah. Like, be real. Oh my gosh, so funny.
So shorter.
Eventually, I'm like, is Be Real going to turn into Instagram one day
I
where
know.
it's like out of control, addictive? But I
Yep.
don't know. I
Everyone can do
like it
10
for
B
now.
reels. Yep. They're doing now, they have where you can create your own Be Real group. Have you seen that?
Oh,
So my
yeah.
daughter created a Be Real group between us, and she gets to pick when the Be Real goes off. And
Oh,
so then it's just like a feed between her and I of our Be Reals back and forth to each
that's
other. I
kind
was
of
like, oh,
fun.
that could get out of control.
That
You
could
have
get
like
out of control.
25 of those with people. But
Got
it's
to
fun
check in
with
with
me
my
and
friend
her.
group and my
Yeah.
entrepreneur group and my
Yep.
kids.
Yep. Yep.
That's so funny. What a
Oh,
world we live
I
in.
know. This has been such a fun conversation.
So
I love
fun.
it. Yes, such great ideas. You gave so many great ideas for women to just really, I think, one, become aware. I always say awareness is the first step. Like, you just have to become aware of what's going on, know what's causing these things, and then put some tools into effect. And I think we covered all of those aspects today, which is
Yeah.
so wonderful. And I wanted to bring up your fun book that just came out that your daughter
Oh,
you
yes.
came out with. It kind of ties in this. It's about the brain, the duality. Do you want to talk a little
Yes.
bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. We did a children's book.
Yes, it's
I
so
had this
cute.
story I wanted to tell because as I coach people, especially entrepreneurs who are like, on the one hand, really ambitious and they have big goals they want to achieve. And then the next day they're like, I just can't get myself to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just, whatever. I felt like the laundry needed to get done. And so I didn't work on my business.
Yeah.
It's like we have these two characters in our brain, right? And
Yeah.
one is the bird that wants to go and fly around, and one is the cat that just wants to lay around. And either one of them out of hand isn't healthy. Like, just being lazy all
Yeah.
the time isn't useful, but also constantly having to be on the go and having to prove your worth by achieving big
Mm-hmm.
success and make everything perfect is also not
Yeah.
healthy. And so the two in combination are actually where we live our best lives. So I wrote a children's book about it. It's called Carl and Sophia and Your Amazing Brain. And then my 16-year-old daughter is a really beautiful artist. And
It's so
so
cute. It's so
didn't
cute.
she do a great job? I
She
asked her, will
did.
you do the illustrations? And she said yes. And it was a long project. It took us a full year, but we're really proud of how it turned out. So you can get
It's
it on Amazon or wherever.
Yes, it's so amazing. I love it. I love
Thank
that concept.
you.
And I love it for kids, right? Like, kids, I think,
Yeah,
need to understand that too,
that's right.
and the both and be able to, anything that teaches them about the brain, like, I think is so wonderful. I have therapists
Yeah.
that work under me in the schools. And so I'm getting the book
Oh,
for them to be
oh,
able to show
yay.
talk to the kids in the schools about their brain and how it works. And
I'm so grateful for those people and even just teachers. I have a daughter in second grade and she came home with, I always pull them aside. She came home with this worksheet that said, mistakes help me learn. And it talked about how it's okay to make mistakes. And then it had her brainstorm, what are some mistakes you might make? I was like,
yeah,
brilliant. And then the other day
yes,
she said, I said, what'd you do at school today? She said, we talked about worrying. We talked about how if you're worrying about the weather, that's not something you can do anything about. But if you're worrying about being on time, that is something that you can do something about. I was like, I love that they're teaching you
yes,
that at school. Why did no one teach me that in
yes,
second grade?
yes.
Anyway, I think that they're doing such a better job
Mhm.
than
They are.
we used to, and I'm really appreciative. And so we'll need to do some more books.
Yes, I love
Yeah.
it. It's the social emotional learning push that they're doing in schools that is
Yeah.
super
So
helpful.
good.
I think I love it. So
So good.
awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Do you want to tell everybody where to find you, your podcast, all of that?
Oh yeah. My podcast is called Better Than Happy. You can check that out. And there's lots of free resources and things at jodymoore.com. So
Awesome. And we'll link all those in the show notes for everyone.
awesome. Thanks,
Awesome.
Nikki.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for listening to the LDS Mental Health Podcast. I hope you were able to find ways of healing, guidance, and peace. If you liked this episode, please share it with a friend who would love to start thinking in a higher and holier way as well. Or hit that follow button so you don't miss out on any episodes. Also, check out the links in my show notes for other episodes you might like and links for other mental health resources on my website.